What is going on, everybody? How are you doing today? And I hope you're enjoying your Saturday morning/afternoon. This is MYG Jeffy 3285, and I'm just going to go over some observations that I've been hearing about in terms of what's going on at New York Giants training camp for the first week of the New York Giants training camp season as we head towards preseason as well as the NFL season starting September 11th when the New York Giants are going to be facing off at 4:15 against the Tennessee Titans down there in Nashville, Tennessee. So far some of the observations I've been hearing right now from camp is that right now there's going to be a lot of new motions going on with the offense, which I love to hear right now, that players are being moved around a lot in the offense. You see different types of combinations and everything. Receivers coming out of the backfield, receivers being able to go into motion a lot before the play is snapped. You see receivers going out in the slot, in the split out wide. You see some, different types of running concepts. This one thing that I have noticed too is that the coaches are trying to make sure that these running backs become wide receivers or vice versa. They're trying to get as much versatility out of these guys, namely players like Kadarius Toney, Richie James, Wan'Dale Robinson, and of course Saquon Barkley. You're seeing these guys lined up all over the field, whether it's right now, like I mentioned, backfield, slot, outside, in motion, moving out around every single time before the play is snapped. You love to see that because it's their way to try to find a way to confuse the defenses before the ball is even snapped and try to make sure that you throw off what the defensive coordinators are trying to call when you have all these guys in motion right now, and you have to try to keep track of where these guys are going to be going in terms of the routes that they're going to be running, and also if there's going to be some types of crisscrosses, bubble screens, slants, deep posts, curl routes, whatever it is. You got to always keep track of what these guys are going to be doing on offense. So I love hearing about that. Another thing that has really made me excited has been the play so far in the blocking of the offensive line, namely the two outside offensive tackles, Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal. I'm very high right now on what I've been hearing from Andrew Thomas, what I've been seeing from Andrew Thomas, and I really believe that this guy is going to be developing into one of the best left tackles in the NFL this year, if he isn't already, because he's coming in with a lot of leadership, calm, poise, and he's getting it done out there in the terms of his play on the field. Ditto for a guy like Evan Neal. Evan Neal right now, he comes up as a very soft-spoken guy in terms of how he conducts his interviews. When it comes to the football field, this guy plays with a mean streak. He plays with fire. He's big. He's tall. He looks built like a Greek god out there. Evan Neal has all the traits that you need for an offensive tackle. And I feel for the first time, how many times have New York Giants been able to go out there and say, and New York Giants fans have been able to go out there and say, that we can have the utmost confidence in our offensive tackles, and namely our offensive line, when it comes to the blocking, it comes to the blocking schemes going out there for this team. I have the utmost confidence right now in Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal that when push comes to shove, they're going to be able to go out there and make the blocks that are necessary to make sure they're going to give Daniel Jones the time he needs to scan the field looking for his open receiver, whether it's the running back, tight end, quarterback, whoever it is. And also, I feel very confident right now in the offensive line in terms of they're blocking. I know it's practice. You have to see it on the field. I get that. But in terms of the offensive tackles, I do feel confident in Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal going forward with this offensive line. The interior of the line, I still think is a little bit of a work in progress, as I got to see these guys more when it comes to the game footage. I don't know about John Feliciano at center. I don't know about Shane Lemieux where he is coming back from that injury. I think Lewinsky can be a very solid right guard. Not spectacular, but solid. But I do like what I see from the offensive tackles. I think the Giants might finally have a couple of guys they can have as building blocks going forward with this team. Another thing that I like right now is the pass rush. I do think that this pass rush, in terms of the front four and maybe even the front seven, if you want to say that Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari are going to be guys that are going to be able to come off the rush, when it comes depending on the defensive package that we have, I do think that Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari are going to be guys that are going to be able to make the pass rush on the outside when it's there. So I'm very happy and confident with those guys. I think Leonard Williams with the one-on-one opportunities is going to be able to take advantage of that. And everything I keep hearing about Dexter Lawrence is he's getting into the backfield right now. I think he's going to be the biggest beneficiary when it comes to this pass rush. So I really love what I hear from the front seven with Wink Martindale continuing to blitz and blitz and blitz. That makes me happy, and I think Blake Martinez, his help in the run game is going to be a big-time asset. Now, some of the things that are concerning me a little bit from what I hear is that the offense still seems like they're way behind in terms of learning the play calls, the offensive way it's running right now. I think they're still a work in progress. Daniel Jones, in fact, he's had some spotty moments. He's had some moments where he's made some very nice throws, including a nice corner pass to Wan'Dale Robinson yesterday. So I'm very happy about that. And in terms of what I see from his certain some of his passes have been good. I think Kadarius Toney has had a pretty good camp so far as he started. Wan'Dale Robinson has come off with a very strong camp so far. I think Richie James is going to be one of the sleepers in camps. I think he's going to be one of the sleepers to make this roster going forward. And in terms of Saquon Barkley, I think he's ready for a prime bounce back year. But I still think this offense is a work in progress. They're still working on their timing in terms of the wide receivers and the quarterbacks working on getting their timing routes together. Trying to figure out when these guys are going to be there in their right spots. When they're going to be able to build that connection that you need. It takes time to build a connection between quarterbacks and receivers, tight ends, running backs, whoever it is. So I still think that that's still a work in progress in terms of what we're going to see. I'm still worried about this inside linebacker position because while you do think the inside the upside with some of these players can be good, I'm still worried about guys like Darian Beavers and Mike McFadden. They're young players. I don't know what I'm going to get from this Austin Calitro. I think he's more of a special teams player. Blake Martinez is coming off a serious injury, so you don't know where he's going to be coming into the season. I think Tate Crowder is a nice player, but I don't expect this guys to be somebody you're going to rely on coming into the season. And I still worry about this cornerback position. While I do think that these guys have some upside, we don't know what these guys are going to be coming into the season. And while Adoree Jackson, I think, will be a very good player in terms of being that number one cornerback, I don't know what we have in Wan'Dale Robinson, though I do like the fact that he's a very physical guy. And I do like the fact that he's playing physical right now in this league. I love Xavier McKinney in terms of the safety position. I think Xavier McKinney is ready to take on that leadership role, much like Andrew Thomas is on the offensive side. I think Xavier McKinney is ready to take on that leadership role on the defensive side. And in fact, Xavier McKinney had the green dot on his head when it came to calling the defensive play. So I like hearing that. I think Xavier McKinney is ready to break out in terms of being one of the best safeties in this league. And I like the fact that he's been able to call some of those defensive plays this year. But I'm worried about, some of these younger players. We're putting too much faith in some of these guys. And that's why I think an acquisition of an Andrew Adams that the New York Giants made a couple of days ago was such a big acquisition for this defense. As I think Andrew Adams is going to bring a lot to this defense in terms of veteran leadership. And if guys like Yusuf Corker and Dane Belton are not ready, and if Julian Love is still better off used as that jack of all trades, they're the guy you can put everywhere on this offense, the Swiss Army knife, a lot of Giants fans have been calling him. I think Andrew Adams is going to be a perfect guy you can put in there as that veteran guy you can have for this defense going forward. But I think that we're putting maybe a little bit too much in terms of the expectations for some of these guys on this defense. So I'm a little bit concerned about the secondary as well as the inside linebacker position. But as we know, if the pass rush can get to the quarterback and cause disruption, it can mask what could be a very, very suspect secondary going forward. And I do like the overall vibe, what I'm hearing right now from the coaching staff, from the team. Seems to be a lot more of a positive vibe right now coming from the fan base, coming from the coaching staff, coming from the team and the players overall. But as we say, it's practice right now. You're going to get that from the new regime. You're going to get that from practice time from time. So, take it with a grain of salt right now, what you get from that. As I think that while it's all good right now, we have to see what happens when it comes to games, either whether it's the preseason or whether it's regular season. We have to see what these players and this team can do when it comes to crunch time in the regular season when games actually matter. Now, in terms of some Players that could be breaking out that I'm hearing right now, I'm hearing a lot of good things about Ellerson Smith. That Ellerson Smith is right now getting into the backfield. He's causing some disruption. Yeah, it might be against some second teamers. He's also gotten some first team snaps, which I like to hear. So Ellerson Smith right now I think is making somewhat of an impact, and he could be that guy that can be that situational pass rusher. He can be that third guy in the outside linebacker rotation, which you want to hear. So I love what I'm hearing about Ellerson Smith. I think he's going to be a guy that could potentially be that third outside linebacker / defensive end in terms of rotating in and out. So I love what I'm hearing about Ellerson Smith. Another guy that I like hearing about is Julian Love. I think Julian Love, he's not a spectacular player. I'm not expecting him to be like, a Pro Bowler or anything, but I do expect Julian Love to just go out there and make the plays when they're there and necessary, to be a guy that's going to be used wherever you want him to line up. I think he's going to play very well. Not great, but he's going to play well and he's going to get the job done. I think Julian Love, while he struggles in coverage at times, I think he's an excellent open field tackler. And I think that's one thing that a lot of these Giants cornerbacks and safeties struggle with, is when it comes to the open field tackling. And I really like what Julian Love does when it comes to the open field, and he's a surefire tackler, what he learned when he was playing in Notre Dame a few years ago. And I think Wink Martindale is going to like what he sees in Julian Love going forward. And also, in terms of the offensive side, I like what I'm hearing from a guy like Richie James. I think Richie James is a guy that's going to fit in perfectly when it comes to, the type of player that when it comes to Mike Kafka and Brian Dable, what they're going to look for in terms of an offensive player. I love what I'm hearing right now in terms of what he's bringing to the table. And also, I don't even think it's the wide receiver position he's going to be the biggest asset for. Look for the return game. I think Richie James is going to be that type of player that we're going to be using in terms of the kick return and punt return, and maybe we can give a spark to a kick return and a punt return that, let's be honest, has been a dead position for so many years that we've got nothing from that position right now. So I'm curious to see if Richie James, his big asset, if he makes this squad, is he's going to be that primary guy in terms of the kick return and punt return. So I really like what I'm hearing from Richie James. And even a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson, though he's been taking some of his lumps, he's a rookie. We got to remember that. I think Wan'Dale Robinson has been getting off to a pretty good start, but he has been struggling in terms of getting separation. Kudos to my guy Adam Costas for pointing that out. Wan'Dale Robinson has been struggling in terms of his separation at times, but I do think that he's going to be a guy that when he's going to be used all across this offense, and I do think he's going to be able to excel in that type of role. So I do like what I'm hearing from Wan'Dale Robinson, and although he has struggled at times with his separation, we'll have to see what he's going to do going forward. Now, in terms of what a guy's like, I'm not really loving what I'm hearing right now. One guy that I'm not loving what I'm hearing is Quincy Rochet, who I thought was going to be at least the third or fourth outside linebacker / defensive end in terms of rotation for these guys. Seems like Quincy Rochet is a guy that's been buried right now on this depth chart, and I don't love what I'm hearing right now in terms of that, as I really thought that Quincy Rochet was going to be able to break out in terms of his defense. I hope he could turn it around when training camp keeps going on, in terms of second, third week of training camp, and I hope he can maybe make his mark in preseason. But, I'm just really surprised that Quincy Rochet has not been doing as well, and he's been buried right now on that depth chart. Hopefully he could change the narrative, and he can, he can break out in one of these games and, have himself a game, and maybe he can get back into the good graces of the coaching staff going forward. And another guy, I hate to say it, Darius Slayton. I really thought that Darius Slayton right now could be a guy that could be that good situational deep threat going forward with this New York Giants wide receiver core. But he's just been dropping passes. I know it's training camp right now. Take it with a grain of salt, but he's been dropping passes when he's at his opportunities. Guys like Richie James and even C.J. Board have been getting first-team reps over him. Wan'Dale Robinson has consistently been the number 3 receiver right now, with Sterling Shepard still on the mend after recovering from his Achilles injury. Darius Slayton has been right now playing more with the number 2s, like the second team. So that's not a very good outlook for Darius Slayton. And you have to remember, Darius Slayton was not drafted or signed by this regime right now. Wan'Dale Robinson was drafted by this regime. Richie James was signed by the new regime. And even C.J. Board, while he was signed by the old regime, you have to think about where he excels at, special teams, and who's still part of the who's still the special teams coordinator? Thomas McGahee. And Thomas McGahee, for a fact, loves what C.J. Board could bring to the special teams unit. And CJ Board has actually not been that terrible in terms of a wide receiver when he's had his sparingly used opportunities. It's not going to be the guy you want to, like, throw out there all the time. But I think CJ Board, for what he can bring to the table, he's pretty good at it. So it's not very good outlook when it comes to Darius Slayton in terms of, like, he's got to really turn it on. Darius Slayton has got to stop dropping the ball. He's got to start running better routes, and he's got to start getting back into the good races. And Darius Slayton has got to start becoming a standout at training camp and the preseason, or he might find himself as a trade candidate or as a potential cut candidate at the end of the season, because we all know the New York Giants could save $2.5 million on the cap if they end up cutting Darius Slayton because of other guys that are maybe nipping at his heels that maybe haven't been that case before. And another guy, O'Shane Ximines. What has O'Shane Ximines really done right now? I haven't really heard his name in terms of, like, an impact he's been making. And I think, like, some of these other guys have pretty much leapt in front of him, in terms of, like, making the roster as we go forward. I know I apologize. I keep saying It's just a bad habit. I apologize. But, I mean, O'Shane Ximines has not made an impact that we were hoping he could make. And I think he's going to be on the outside looking in when it comes to a roster spot going forward. So those are just some of my players that I think are going to be on the outside looking in, and some of the players that I think are surprising, and just my overall thoughts right now of what we've been hearing and what we've been seeing in terms of clips, videos, player reactions, fans that have been saying, just the overall vibe right now going into the first week of training camp practice as we get ready for the second week and even get ready for preseason games, as it's going to be happening not next week but the week after. So I just want to hear everybody's thoughts, comments, and opinions in this comment section on what you've been hearing about the Giants training camp so far, which players you've heard have been surprising, what players you've liked so far, which players you haven't liked, how you feel about the overall vibe of the New York Giants going into this first few practices of the New York Giants in terms of, like, their training camp going forward. And make sure if you hit the like button below, if you like the video, if you like the content that you've been hearing on the channel, and subscribe if you haven't already to NYG Jeffy T 3285, where I'm going to be giving you more breaking news, contents, and updates surrounding the New York Football Giants, the New York Mets, the Brooklyn Nets, WWE Wrestling, as well as some food for thought. Turn on the bell for notifications on the next video or short that's going to drop for the New York Giants. And like I mentioned earlier, share your comments below on what you think about right now the New York Giants as we begin training camp right now, what players you like, dislike, and what you are expecting as training camp is going to be going along, and what you think is going to happen in training and preseason games as they go forward. Thank you very much. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your Saturday. Take it easy, and we're going to have to see what's going to be happening in the next week of New York Giants training camp and who else can maybe emerge with the New York Giants going forward and maybe takes a step back. It's all a guessing game right now, but we're all just happy to have New York Giants football back front and center for us New York Giants fans to view and love going forward. Take it easy, everybody. Enjoy your Saturday. Have a great rest of your Saturday. And let's go, New York Football Giants.